With the development of new low and zero carbon fuels, engine technology for ships has very much been in focus, and you'll be hearing from a company at the centre of these developments. Hi, this is Marcus Hand, editor of Seatrade Maritime News, and today we are talking to Bjarne Foldager from Everllence, ahead of Marintec China 2025 in Shanghai. Bjarne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Marcus.
Firstly, could you just briefly introduce yourself and your role at Everllence to our listeners?
Yeah, my name is Bjarne Foldager. I'm head of the two-stroke business here at Everllence. I'm based in Denmark, where I'm also the country manager for Everllence in Denmark.
We're going to be talking to you about some of the issues in the market as we go through this episode. But I think firstly, quite a major event for the company this year has been the rebrand as Everllence from MAN Energy Solutions. So can you tell us a little bit about what lies behind the rebrand and how it's been received in the market?
Yes, that is a big thing to rebrand yourself, and it is a big task. So therefore, of course, it's something we carefully consider. But there are some major reasons for our rebranding. First of all, we want to make our strategy and goals visible, how our efforts to drive the decarbonisation, moving big things to zero. It's very important. Then it's about uniting and shaping identity. I mean, we have a company history that dates back to 1758. And then we have grown with many different locations and brands. And then we really need a new brand that could unite us and to build our own brands. MAN was a brand we shared with other parts of Volkswagen. We want to invest in our own brand and our own technology. And then, of course, it's about attracting the talents that we need to realize our strategy. And short on the name, Everllence, it's essentially two words, ever and excellence. And ever is to remember our history, more than 250 years. And we have done a lot of first evers in the past. First ever diesel engine, first ever methanol engine, first ever ammonia engine. And then the second part, excellence, is what we strive for in our technology. So that's some of the big reasons.
Okay, I mean, that's interesting, and it's a really long history you've got there as a company as well.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting you said you used the first diesel engine and the first ammonia engine.
Yeah. Actually, the first diesel engine was invented by Rudolf Diesel back in 1897 and in Germany, in Augsburg, and then he licensed it to BMW in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and 1911. We built the world's first ship with diesel engine, the Selandia. And that was actually a big revolution in the industry because they could carry significantly more cargo because it didn't have to carry all the coal, and it was much more energy efficient. But there was one problem at that time. Since it was the first ship with diesel engine, there was no bunker station around. So finally, they actually managed to find a bunker and the fuel in a small island in Southeast Asia, which today is known as Singapore. So I sometimes tell the story in Singapore that we were the cause of Singapore becoming this big bunker hub. But that history is quite important because to some extent it's a little bit the similar situation we have today with the new fuels, where being it methanol or being it ammonia or other fuels. One thing is the technology on the ship, but the big question mark, and maybe we'll get to that later in the podcast, to discuss the challenges with the supply chain and the infrastructure in place to actually have an efficient and competitive setup.
Yeah, it's a very interesting piece of history there. And as you say, I think that's something we'll come back to later in the podcast, in that sort of almost chicken and egg situation you described in Singapore with the diesel way back when.
We've done it before, so I'm sure we could do it again.
If you're enjoying the Seatrade Maritime Podcast, make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing on the app of your choice. Firstly, this is a podcast that we're doing in association with Marintec, the event coming up in Shanghai. So I thought it'd be good if you could explain to our listeners a little bit about the importance of the Chinese market to Everllence and the company's activities in China.
So we have been active in China actually for 45 years. Our first business we started in China on the engine business was in 1980, and today we have business all over China for the two-stroke and the four-stroke engines. Actually, we have licensees in major parts of of China. For the two-stroke licensees, we have a total of 8 different engine builders, and for the four-stroke, we have 4 different engine builders. So that means we are able to meet the demand and supply engines to all the shipyards in China. I think we are total in Everllence more than 700 people. Of course, for the engine business, we support very much the new building shipyards. We support the engine builders, and for the existing ships, there's quite a lot of ships that are dry docking in China, where we have to support on the engine part, but also retrofitting. In reality, the big retrofits, being it gas retrofits or dual fuel retrofits, they take place in Chinese shipyards. So China is extremely important for us as a company.
That's a really substantial presence. You mentioned that the two-stroke and four-stroke engines, is there a shift in that market with those?
Yeah. So for when I talk about the four-stroke engines, I'm particularly talking about the auxiliary gensets for the ships, where the two-stroke engines are the ships that we are involved in China. The merchant ships are always built with a two-stroke engine as propulsion, but then we typically need 3 or 4 auxiliary engines, and we also have a significant presence there with the production of those.
Right.
And similar to the dual fuel that we see on the two-stroke engines, we are also seeing a similar demand and request for dual fuel engines on the auxiliary engines.
Okay, that's an interesting trend. We mentioned earlier about ammonia, and obviously ammonia, methanol, and other new fuels coming up. How is that coming along for Everllence?
I mean, if you look at all the orders and our order book today, a little more than half of our order book is actually dual fuel now. And when I'm talking about the order book, I'm usually talking about the order book mentioned in power in megawatts, because in the end, that is what's important also when we talk about decarbonization. In terms of number of engines, it's still the single fuel that is dominating it. But the bigger engines for the bigger ships, there's a clear trend that the overwhelming part of that is dual fuel, and more than half the order book is dual fuel. If you look at what is most prominent, then it is still methane, or most people refer to it as LNG, of course, which is the fuel that is available today in many ports. The supply chain is up and running. You have the bunker infrastructure is well established in the major ports. I call it methane instead of LNG because methane is probably a better description of the actual fuel. The technology, the engine doesn't care how the molecules have been developed. It is from natural gas, or it's from synthetic gas, or if it's from biogas. As long as it's methane, the engine will chew away on it. That's a vast majority. Then we have seen the last 3-4 years quite a number of methanol engines being ordered for big ships. Initially, we started methanol with the tankers, the methanol tankers, 50,000 deadweight MRs. And now 4 or 5 years ago, we saw it also uptake in container ships with all the big container lines, Maersk, CMA CGM, Hapag-Lloyd, COSCO, Evergreen, O&E have ordered ships or have ships already in service with methanol engine. And we also have seen methanol in car carriers. I guess it makes sense. A lot of these EV cars that are exported, for instance, from China and Japan, they should be transported in ships with sustainable fuel also. So that is methanol. We also have VLCCs and bulkers now on methanol. So more than 240 ships now either on order or already be delivered with the methanol fuel engine systems. Ammonia is a little bit different. Ammonia is still a little bit early stage in terms of rolling it out in the market. We decided on ammonia to have a responsible market introduction, meaning that we have done extensive testing on ammonia. We have done more than 800 tests on ammonia since we started testing more than 2.5 years ago, because the toxicity of the fuel, we want to be extra careful. We want to make sure that we covered all the risks that we can cover before the engine is getting into the market. But now we're starting to see the first engines being assembled. The first engine has been tested in Japan for bulk carrier. We also see engines in Korea for very large ammonia carriers being assembled now here in November and tested beginning of next year. We have projects also with shipyards in China, large car carriers, where the engine will be delivered in 2026 for 4 PCTCs that will be fueled with ammonia in the future.
Okay, there's quite a lot to unpack there, actually. I'm going to go back. I'm going to sort of take this in 3 parts. The first thing is dual fuel, and in general, how much of that, when you say 50% of the order book is dual fuel, how much of that is actually dual fuel as soon as it comes out of the yard, and how much of it is ready?
It's all of it. So when I say dual fuel, it means that the ship had been delivered and is ready to burn combust dual fuel from the delivery. I'm not talking about readiness or ammonia prepared or ammonia ready, because essentially when we talk about the engine, the technology, all our engines today are prepared and ready for ammonia. So I'm only talking about the ships that are actually ready and capable from the delivery to sail on dual fuel.
Yeah, okay. As you said, it's for the big ships, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
Why is it the big ships? What's driving it for those vessels?
Well, it's probably related to the ship type also. Especially, we see a lot of container ships. Last year, more than 80% of the container ships that were ordered in 24 were actually dual fuel. I think it's because the ports that they're calling have the capability of supplying the fuel now, particularly in LNG, but also because it's a request from their customers to make progress on the decarbonisation, irrespective whether it's methanol or methane. And I think there's also, to a large extent, a need from the owners to show that they're doing some things, that they are thinking about the future, that they're preparing the fleet for the future. I think that's a big requirement from both from the owners themselves, but also from, for instance, the banks that are financing the ships. They want to make sure the ships will last for 25 years, make sure that this is prepared for the future also.
It's good to see those developments happening. Now, you talked about methanol.
Yeah.
You've obviously got ships on the water with methanol engines, right?
Yeah.
How has that process gone?
I think it's quite good. Of course, there are in the new technology, sometimes there are things that we need to mature. And we have had some, also in our technology, some teething issues, not related sort of to the actual combustion and burning of methanol, but more related to the durability of the parts. How often do we need to replace the parts? So there we have been working closely with the respective owners to find the solutions for that. I think if we talk to the ship owners, some of the challenges that they have been facing is probably related to the availability of methanol, because it's faster to build and deliver the ships with the methanol engine compared to the production and supply chain and logistics of the sustainable methanol as a fuel.
Which kind of brings us back to where you started when you were talking about the first diesel engines, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And this is probably also one of the big expectations we had from the recent MEPC meeting in London here in October, where we hoped that, of course, the clarity on the regulation could bring the necessary confidence into the fuel producers that they would, sign off on the investment decisions. But now, realistically, some of those investment decisions in fuel production will have to be postponed for 12 months until we have the clarity in 1 year later from IMO.
So what does that mean for yourselves as Everllence?
Well, it means that, we, from our side, we have our strategy on decarbonization and digitalization. We will continue on that. So there will be no change. From our side, we are very committed to the framework that has been developed by IMO. And that means we have developed that technology. So what it means practically for the next 12 months, we will continue the work and our support to IMO to finalize some of the outstanding work on life cycle assessment, for instance, right, where some of the fuels still have some work to be done by IMO to get the clarity for the ship owners and the producers. So that we will continue to support that. But otherwise, we are not holding back. We are continuing to develop the technology. We are sure it's the right decision, and we are sure that it will happen.
Okay. And obviously you still have things like the regulations in Europe, EU ETS and so forth.
Yeah, that is correct. And we see, particular as an example, you to mention the container ships that are fueled by methanol. We see some of the ship owners are running on methanol the entire voyage, but also other ship owners are running on methanol only in the EU coastal part of the voyage to optimize the fuel that they can get hold of.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that before. And just lastly, ammonia. Where are we at? You said you'd done the first test, I think, in Japan.
Yeah, so we have been testing since the previous IMO meeting in July 2023. We started testing ammonia on our full-scale test engine we have in Copenhagen. So we test for 2.5 years, including full-scale testing, 100% load. And the first commercial engine we have tested in Japan, in Tamano, with Mitsui, our partner. And basically, that engine is ready for delivery to the shipyard, whenever the shipyard is require that engine. And then we have in Korea with Hyundai, we have the first engines for very large ammonia carriers that are being assembled for the testbed here in November. And then they will be tested and delivered to the shipyard in the Q1 2026.
So we're going to see those on the water quite soon then.
Yeah, we expect those first commercial ammonia engines on the water later on in 26. And that is quite important because even though we have done so extensive testing, we're also very keen on seeing how they perform in the real environment on board the ships. And for that purpose, we have a very close cooperation with the ship owners. We have agreed that the ships will be connected online. So that means that we will get data points from the engine, real life data, 500 data points every minute from the ammonia engines when they are delivered. This will help us to support the ship owners that these ammonia engines will be successful.
So there's a lot of learning that's going to go on behind the scenes there then.
I'm sure. One thing is the technology, but it's also the human interaction, all the tests, all the safety systems we have been put in place. Of course, the proof we will see when the crew are actually operating the engine successfully.
So pretty busy 12 months ahead for you then.
Absolutely. We are not sitting and waiting for IMO to finalize the work. On the contrary, we will have to see how we can speed up the things from our side also.
Yeah, so that's good to hear, and look forward to sort of coming back to you to talk about that in the future. Just to round this up, as mentioned before, doing this in association with Marintec China, which you're going to be at. Can you just tell me what you're expecting out of that event?
This will be a very, very busy week, starting already on Sunday, the 30th of November. So we of course, the actual exhibition is big for us. We'll have a very, very big booth where we're able to receive many visitors, and I expect it will be crowded. It will be packed. I think last time, 2 years ago, there were more than 60,000 visitors, international visitors. And I think we will see similar this time. That's my expectations. This is really the showcase for technology, not only for China, but for the world. And then at the same time, there's a number of conferences taking place in the next to the actual exhibition, where there will be a lot of discussions in industry partners regarding what are the trends, how does regulation from IMO impact or the delay impact the business. I don't think we can completely avoid geopolitical discussions in China taking place in China this time also. So it will be interesting to hear and see how can we support the ship owners navigating these difficult times that they're facing.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some very interesting discussions, and I think just based on our chat just now, you've got a lot to contribute.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay, Bjarne, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to our listeners, and we look forward to seeing you at Marintec China.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Seatrade Maritime Podcast, and we look forward to joining you on our next episode.